Hey friends, we are keeping it real today. I've got laundry on my couch behind me because this is the reality of today and I don't have time to change that. I just wanted to hop on here really quickly because I wanted to share this activity with you, and it might be just the project that you're looking for. It might be something that a friend really needs that you can provide. So I had this idea. I was actually thinking about how hard this past year has been and just how hard it's been for quite a few of my friends, and how much I want to be there to hug them and to tell them it's okay and to be there for them. And I can't always be there, whether they live out of town or just scheduling and time. And I'm there for them and I'm always there for them, but I don't always have the time to physically be there for them. And so I was thinking, what could I do? What could I give them to let them know that I'm always there, and maybe something that could just comfort them through this really hard time. So today I'm going to show you guys how to knit a hug. Now, full disclosure here, I am not the world's greatest knitter. I'm actually probably the world's most mediocre knitter. I don't knit very often. I'm a seasonal knitter. When it gets really cold outside, I start to have the urge to knit things, which doesn't really make sense since it usually takes so long to knit something. You would think you would want to start that before it's actually cold, but it's something that I learned how to do about 6 years ago. When I say I'm mediocre, I'm not being humble. I'm legit mediocre. But if anything, hopefully this will show you that if I can do this, anybody can do this. And for those of you seasoned knitters that can take this very simple, basic pattern and then turn it into something really elaborate and amazing, wonderful. I'm going to show you real fast. I'm going to show you, first off, how to make a slip knot, how to cast on. I'm going to show you how to knit, how to purl, and how to bind off. It's very, very simple. I think that this project is really great because it actually feels like a hug. And I think that right now, in the world that we're living in, we could all use a hug. And sometimes it's just the thing to help somebody get through their day. And I lost a friend of mine a few years back, and I couldn't physically be there for her. And I would give anything to be able to hug her now. And so this is one of those gifts. This is one of those gifts that I want my friends to know that I am there. I am thinking about them. I love them. And if it helps them get through a day, then it's the greatest gift that I could ever give them. This is very, very simple. And it's actually, I'm kind of an instant gratification kind of person. Like, I don't like really, really long, tedious projects. It's probably one of the reasons why I love photography. It's like, you take your picture, you get it done, it's great. I don't like things that are gonna take too long. So this is a quick one. So it's a great project, especially if you need a last minute Christmas present. This is the project for you. All you're gonna need, scissors. You're going to need some gigantic knitting needles. These are size 35, so it'll be 19 millimeter. Huge knitting needles. This is what I've found to be the best for this type of project. And then you're gonna need 3 skeins. So this is a skein. You're gonna need 3 skeins of super, super chunky. I'm using and I'm gonna butcher this and I apologize, the Bernat, this stuff, I don't remember, how do you pronounce it? This is the Blanket Big. This is big, chunky yarn. And this is jumbo, size 7. It's huge. There's 32 yards in this, and you're gonna need 3 of these. Now, you can combine and you can do you know, 3 different colors. You can do all the same color, or you can get one of these. It's the multicolor, and then it naturally kind of just puts the different colors through there. That's what I'm gonna go with for this one. So, but you will need 3 of these. Another thing that you're gonna need is either a small rubber band or just a simple piece of string. You don't wanna tie it just around one of your needles, okay? Now, the reason you're gonna want to do this is because unless you have an incredible memory, you're going to need to remember, am I supposed to be knitting or am I supposed to be purling? This is gonna help you. So I always tie this around to kind of help me remember, because I just forget. And I know people are like, oh, but you can look to see which one you've done. I don't wanna look, I want this, and then I'm done. And it's easy and quick, and I can just go about my knitting business. All right, so to make your life easier, you're going to want to pull from the center. And look, it's not, that was a lie. That was not the center. Oh, that makes me so mad. Now, one other little tip. I have this gorgeous bowl that I got at the Pink Palace Crafts Fair, which is one of my favorites in Memphis. So I got this beautiful bowl, and this is actually gonna go on the floor next to me, and this is gonna go in here. To keep this from flopping all over the floor, it's going to keep it in that bowl. So the very first thing that we have to do is make a slip knot. You wanna make sure that you have plenty of yarn, because we need a fairly long tail to be casting on. So what I like to do is I like to go straight out my arm into my shoulder, okay, for this project. Arm to this shoulder. So this much. It's a lot, but you're gonna need it. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a slip knot, and a slip knot is super, super easy. All you're gonna do is you're gonna take our little loop. So this is where we've measured out. This was the part that was on our shoulder. We're gonna take this, okay, watch. I'm going to twist this like this, see that? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fingers through here. So here's the X, here are my fingers, and I'm going to reach down and I'm going to grab that tail that's the end, and I'm going to pull it up. See that? And then you can adjust it, and that's your slip knot. And that's going to be our first little cast on. So that's going to be 1. Now I'm going to take, so this is that loose piece right here, and I'm going to take, see that it comes apart right here. So here's where it's connected, and I'm going to take these pieces and I'm going to put one over my pointer finger. So this is the tail that's attached to the ball of yarn. This is the thumb, my thumb right here. This part over my thumb is the tail, and I'm going to bring them down like this. Once I have these over, I'm going to take the extras and I'm going to pinch them with my hand under here, just gently, because I'm going to go under that one, under that one, back through that thumb. Okay, so we're going back. So we're going to go under, under, back through. That's 3. Under the thumb, under the pointer finger, back through the thumb. So, 3. So it's like up, down, through. Think of it that way, it's a whole lot easier. So you're going to go up, down, through, because it's got to come off of your thumb. So just remember that, that'll help. So up, down, and back through. All right, let's count these. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we want to put 12 on here. So up, down, and through. Tighten it at the knitting needle. Up, down, and through. Up, down, and through. Oh, I've lost count already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. One more, and up, down and through. Pull that tight. So now I have 12. I've cast on 12. Now, periodically, as you're knitting, you're going to want to make sure that you still have 12. Because sometimes things happen, but just keep checking. Okay, so now it is time. We've got 12 stitches cast on. And now we've got a little bit of our extra tail from our long tail cast on. And now it's time to start knitting. So we're going to knit a row, and then we're going to purl a row. Honestly, I think with knitting, the hardest part for me has always been remembering the steps to get started. Every single year when I pick back up my knitting needles, I have to do like a refresher. Okay, my slip knot, my casting on. Casting on is always one of those that I start to second guess myself. Knitting, every single time, I don't need any help with, because it's a very, very, very simple thing to do. So I'm going to show you guys a simple knit stitch, and then I'm going to show you how to purl. So this is just easier for me to show you my view looking down. And all you're going to do is, you've got your tail. This is the part, this is connected to your yarn, your skein of yarn down below. And all you're going to do, here's the point here, we're going to go to that first little stitch, okay? So with the knit stitch, we're always going to keep that yarn kind of going to the back, and we're going to slide our needle through this little stitch. So it's going to come up behind it, okay, like this. And we're going to take this piece of yarn, and we're going to go under it, back over it, and then we're going to pull this needle back out. But we're going to keep that tip running along this knitting needle so that we don't lose that stitch, because when we come out, we're going to pull up, and you're going to see that you're attached to this one and this one. But all we're going to do is we're going to slide that one stitch off, okay? All right, so now we look like this. So now we've got one stitch over here, and we've got 11 over here. So now we've got, our goal is to get all of them from here to here. So we're going to go back. We're going to go through that little stitch underneath, okay? We're going to go under, over. We're going to pull it back up, and off. Under. And the more you do this, the faster you can get at it. You want to make sure you don't go too tight. Right now I'm kind of tensing up a little bit. I don't knit in front of people. Pull that off. Now, I am not going to show you me knitting the entire process. Like, you don't, once you realize that this is just a repeated pattern of knit, purl, and just continue on, this isn't something that I need to show you how to do. You really need to learn the basic stitches. So I will put some timestamps in here so that you know which part. So if once you get to this part, you're like, oh, yeah, all right, I already know how to knit. I already know how to purl. Well, then I'll get to all the details of how long and everything. So there'll be timestamps. I'll get to the details of how long everything needs to be and how it works in the end. Here we have what we've knit so far, okay? And now, because this little string right here, this shows me that that's a knit side. So anytime I see that string, I know it's time to knit. And when I see it, it's when this is a naked needle, okay? So when the naked needle has the string, that means it's time to knit. But because this one's got all the stitches on it, it's time to purl. So for the purl, this is what we're gonna do. So for the purl, what you're gonna do is this yarn is gonna go in the front, and you're going to still go through that stitch, but you're, instead of going behind the needle, with a purl you go to the front. And then you're going to take this yarn and go around in the front, So it's the same type of motion, but going in the opposite direction. Then you're going to slide that off, okay? So again, this is to the front. We're going to slide under here, go around, come out the back, and pull it off. Now the great thing about working with this really, really thick yarn and these really, really fat needles is that you can get a project done in no time. You can make a scarf, you can make a blanket, you can make a headband, you can make a hat, you can make whatever you want, but it's so great because it's really, really fast. And to me, that's very satisfying, especially when I think one of the main reasons why I like to knit is I just like the process. It's not necessarily the finished product that I'm just so excited that I have a hat or a blanket. I mean, it's nice. I just really find the act of knitting very, very relaxing and therapeutic. And there's just something cool about being able to create anything. I mean, I just love the fact that if the world shut down, I could knit clothing for my family. Okay, I'm not that good, but I could. If I had to, I could teach myself how to knit clothing for my family. It's one of those random things I always think about. How can a skill help me in a survival situation? Am I the only person that does that? Does anybody else do that? Put in the comments if you're one of those crazy people like me that's always thinking, what would I do if the whole world shut down? Okay, so this is our last little pearl. All right. I mean, look how far we've already gotten. And we've only cast on, knit a row, and purled a row. I mean, that's pretty crazy, isn't it? All right, look, we've got the string, we got a naked needle. That means it's time to knit. Okay, we are making progress. So remember before I told you just to periodically count your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, just making sure. Make sure I didn't drop any stitches. Okay, so now it's time to purl. Okay, we are making progress. So remember before I told you just to periodically count your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, just making sure. Make sure I didn't drop any stitches. Okay, so from here, all you're going to do is you're going to continue. I've got a naked knitting needle, so I know that it's time to purl. You're just going to continue doing knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, all the way across until you finish all 3 skeins of yarn. I'm going to show you, gotta watch out for that yarn. I'm going to show you how to attach the extra yarn so you can kind of keep going with your skein. Super, super simple. And I'm going to show you how to bind off, and then I'm going to show you how to make this hug work. Now, one thing I do like to do when I'm making a hug for someone is I like to pray for them while I'm making their hug. I like to think about maybe what they're going through, maybe what they need prayers for. It could be a simple prayer of protection, a prayer of peace. If you aren't the praying type, it could be thoughts of peace. Just putting love and imagining that this is going to be your arms going around them. So I like to make sure that this is filled up and ready to go when I send it to them. When they're using their hug, I want them to feel all of the love that I've put into it, because that's what it's for. Just think about that when you're making it. I do think that there is some power in that. There is definitely some power in prayer. There is power in love and kindness. And I think the world could use a lot more of that. So just think about that when you're making your hug for your friends. Okay, so I am now, that's 2 skeins right here. I do see 2 skeins. I'm to the point now where I only have this much yarn left. And so on this skein. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the new end of this skein and the old end of this one, and I am going to tie them in a knot, and I'm just literally tying it in a knot. Told y'all, it's not rocket science. Maybe it's supposed to be, maybe there's supposed to be some magical way that I'm supposed to do this, but this is the way that I do it. Now, you can leave these longer if you want to weave these in. I'm actually going to snip these off so it's a little bit shorter. I'm just going to tuck it in. It's a little more forgiving when it's this fuzzy and fluffy of yarn. You can't tell quite as much, especially since, I mean, this is pretty bumpy, but the weight of this already, because of how heavy this yarn is pretty substantial. I mean, this thing's got some heft to it, which is perfect. This is what we're gonna need. We need that weight. All right, so now this is connected. It just continues on. So all I need to do is continue knitting. The reason that I am knitting one side and purling one side is just because of the look that I wanted. So what that does is it creates 2 different looks. So this is my knit side. You can see that. And this is what it looks like on my purl side. So it just kind of gives it 2 different looks, which I like. But with this project, you can honestly do whatever combination you want. If you wanted to do any pattern, it doesn't matter. It's really more about how wide it is, and you know how long you end up making it, and this weight of this big bulky yarn that's going to make this work for our hug. But as far as the pattern goes, that doesn't matter. That's up to you. If you want to get fancy and put some cable stitches in here and have a nice little cable knit hug, that's fine. And you can play around with it and see what type of pattern works best for you. This is an easy project to start with if you've never made a pattern before. It's up to you. It does not matter. It does not change the outcome of the hug at all. So I'm going to finish knitting this. I'm going to show you how we're going to bind off, and then I'm going to show you how this works as a hug and the little note that I include with this gift when I give it, so that it explains what this is. Because otherwise people are going to be like, thanks, it's a super skinny blanket or a really gigantic scarf that will weigh a ton. So they need to understand why you made it and how it's to be used. Okay, so I have finished knitting, and now I have about this much of a tail left on my yarn. And so now it's time to bind off or cast off. And this is just going to help you remove your project from the needle without it unraveling. And so this is super, super simple. All that you're going to do is you're going to knit 1. Make sure you don't go too, for these you want to make sure that you have a little bit of wiggle room as far as it being too tight. You don't want it to be too tight. So you're going to knit 1, knit 2, and then what we're going to do is we're going to need to bring this little loop right here, it's closest to my hand, I need to bring it over this one, all right? So you can use your knitting needle and pull that down. For these, they're kind of chunky, so I'm gonna have to use my thumb to hold it. So I'm gonna hold this and pull this through, and that pulls it off, okay? So now I have 1 on here. So now I'm going to knit 1. So you always start by knitting 2, but once you've done that, you're always just gonna knit 1. And you're just gonna pull the one that's closest to your hand over the other and pull it off, okay? You're gonna do this all the way across. And I'll show you close up what I'm doing. Okay, so here are my needles. And this is, you're getting my view, so this view down, which I've already got that one on, so I'm going to knit, scooch these down a little bit. I'm going to, there we go, hold on. So you're gonna just knit. And once we have two on here, this one has to go over this one. So I'm gonna take my needle. Again, this chunkier yarn, sometimes it's even easier just to do it with your fingers and just pull it to the end. And make sure you hold on to that under one. And then pull that off like that. And then that one becomes the one that's gonna be closest to your hand. All right, one more time. Okay, ready? So, knit, go under this one, and pull it back over that one. And you'll see it's finishing it like this. Looks like a little braid. And that's what it's gonna look like. And we're just gonna keep going until we do the whole thing. And then I'm gonna show you how to finish it at that very last loop, because you're gonna get to the point where you only have one little loop left. Now I have one last loop and I have my little tail. So what I'm going to need to do is, because there's nothing to put over this one, but if I let go of it, this whole thing is going to become unraveled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tail, and I'm going to go over my needle, and I'm going to pull my needle back, and as I pull it back, I'm going to grab that tail, okay? So I'm grabbing that tail, and I'm going to pull it all the way through, and then I'm going to pull it tight. And now it's secure. Now at this point, if you want to, you can add an extra little knot here for security. You're also going to want to snip off. You're only going to need, I would probably do about, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches, and then you can weave this back into your piece, and so you'll never see it. So now that I have pulled this nice and tight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave about 4 or 5 inches on here. And then I'm just going to snip the rest off, because you're not going to need this gigantic tail. And then what you can do now is you can just weave this back in. So you can just kind of tuck it underneath other little loops. And so it just kind of disappears. It's one of the great things about knitting. It's very forgiving. Okay. So I have put that back through. And there it is. So now I'm going to show you how this works as a hug. Okay, so in all, this ends up being around 62 inches long, and it took me, I would say it took me about maybe 3.5 hours. So here's how the hug works. The reason you're going to use those big wide needles is so that your fingers can fit through the little spaces easily. So you've got your fingers through, and as you pull together, it hugs you. The knit has some nice elasticity to it, but it actually squeezes you back, and it feels like a nice warm hug. So it's so comfortable. This thing is really, really nice, and I can't wait to send this off to some very dear friends of mine. I hope you'll try this project. If you do, let me know. I'd love to hear how yours turned out. If you enjoyed this project, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It helps the whole YouTube system, I guess, validate that people like my videos? I don't know. Anyway, put it out there in the world that this is good stuff. Guys, thank you for joining me. You all mean so much to me. You mean so much to this world. You are wonderful. You are loved. Just remember, be kind to one another, and we can all get through this. I love you guys. Sending hugs out to all of you guys. You are loved.